welcome everybody to the LGBTQ affordable housing event at Finn's Place. This is our first panel discussion with Candace Valenzuela, Kimberly Doty, and Lanesha Combs. Yes, and Lanesha Combs. So let's go ahead and get started. So my name is Jonah. I'm the board president here at Finn's Place. I've been learning recently about homelessness and housing issues from the DRC Solutions conversations about homelessness. And the last session I attended, Bruce Frankel talked about the continuum of care. And essentially, the continuum of care is about creating local systems that provide housing and homelessness services at various levels and for people on a continuum of need. You each represent a different level of this system, federal, county, and city, and I want to tap into each of your perspectives on these issues. So I want to start with Candace. Candace is the HUD Regional Administrator for the area, and I want to ask you, what is the federal government's role and your role in defining homelessness, regulating affordable housing, and delegating resources?
Jonah, thank you so much for having me. It is an honor to be here in the very beautiful Finn's Place. I'm with the Department of Housing and Urban Development, and I've got about a 30,000-foot view. I represent the Secretary in the Southwest region. But what I can say is that the federal government and HUD help support communities that are seeking to have affordable housing or having safe or emergency housing for the folks that need it. And we help in a very broad way. So everything from folks who are literally unhoused right now, there's funding available for that, all the way to folks who are looking to buy their first home. They're not in the highest income bracket, and so they're eligible for an FHA loan. And we also help folks that are not necessarily in their best days, and that's because they're facing some sort of housing discrimination. And we understand fully that all people deserve access to safe and affordable housing. Now, back to what you said about the definition of homelessness. It's interesting in that the federal government doesn't have a uniform definition of homelessness. And what an agency uses to define as homeless often depends on a particular act that has set it up for us. So in terms of HUD, our definition of homelessness is folks that are unsheltered right now. If you were to ask the Department of Education, their definition of homelessness is folks that are unsheltered right now, and folks that happen to be couch surfing, and folks that happen to be living with friends or family, and that's just not the situation that they want to be in. It's not necessarily a definition that the definition as HUD has it is not necessarily something that I am in love with, but we're working to maximize what we can do with the rules that we're under right now.
Okay. Thank you so much, Candace. Kimberly. Kimberly is with Tarrant County Homeless Coalition, Associate Director of Housing and Landlord Engagement. So as far as the continuum of care in Tarrant County, what services are available? And what does a successful continuum of care look like for Tarrant County, especially as our population is growing and housing is becoming more scarce? How will TCHC go about fostering a healthy continuum of care?
The Tarrant County Homeless Coalition, we are the lead agency for our continuum of care, or our system over homelessness. We have over 40 partner agencies. Fort Worth Housing is one of them. Also, AOC is also one of them. And so part of our job here is to be the lead agency and push out a system of change. So always looking for what resources we can bring to our community, assessing what resources we have and how we can maximize those in our community. We assess the functionality and the productivity of all of our agencies and programs to make sure that we're serving our population the best possible way that we can. To speak to kind of the overall services of our current homeless system, when someone enters homelessness, as of right now, there are 5 different resources that could be available to them. The first part of the conversation should always be diversion. So how can we end your homelessness today? And what does that look like for you? Does that look like getting you a bus ticket to reunite with family and so that they can support you in getting reestablished? Does that look like providing you perhaps a high security deposit because you have income to maintain the rent? It's just we're seeing an increase of exorbitant fees being asked by landlords to move someone in. We call that diversion or rapid exit. We also have a longer support program called shallow subsidy. So that one is going to be 12 months of 50% of fair market rent for that individual in their area, and with very light case management or none at all. It's just you need that shorter term financial assistance to get reestablished, and then once you kind of have that, you will be just fine. We also offer what's called rapid rehousing. So that's going to be a touch more of intensive case management. It's going to be 12 to 24 months of rental assistance. And when we say case management, we also mean wraparound services. So is that connecting you to medical needs, mental health needs? I saw someone's banner back there said, critical documents. Do you need help getting critical documents? You know, and again, we are also continuing to have the conversation of diversion and reestablishing those supports, relationships. We know that the major factor in homelessness is usually because someone no longer has their support system. So how can we work with you throughout the program to reestablish that support system? For those that are in need of more intensive, longer-term support, that's going to be permanent supportive housing. That's for someone who has experienced homelessness for at least 12 months continuously, or 365 days over 3 years in 4 different episodes, so in and out of homelessness. And they just haven't been able to manage that stability. And so, again, wraparound services, usually the case management should be able to be adjusted to whatever that client needs. So if it's daily case management when they first come into our system, that's what our system should be set up to serve that person with. And then most recently, we were granted by the federal government EHVs, thank you, permanent housing, emergency housing vouchers. And so we actually work with our PHAs locally to get those out to our community members that are experiencing homelessness. And that, again, is no case management and a longer rental assistance support.
EHV, Emergency Housing Voucher, and PHA, Public Housing Association.
For TCHC, we just keep an eye out on all of those resources to make sure, again, that we're maximizing them in our community to the best of our ability.
Lanesha is with Fort Worth Housing Solutions. She is the Vice President of Housing Operations and Client Services. As far as needs in Fort Worth go, locally, who are the people that need assistance, and where do they sit on the continuum of need? And on that continuum of care that we've been talking about, what does your organization provide?
Good morning, everyone. So, Fort Worth Housing provides rental assistance in a varied spectrum. I like to say we meet people at their worst, which is our homeless programs, and we get to see them at their best when they're purchasing a home through our family self-sufficiency program and they no longer need us. I would say in Fort Worth right now, I believe it's 33,000 or 36,000 affordable units that we are lacking in our community. And what affordable housing looks like is your neighbor. Honestly, it's your working teacher, it's your beginning nurse, it is your factory worker, it's your restaurant worker. So to address who needs affordable housing in our community, that's really going to be maybe 70 to 80% of our population. The cost of a 1-bedroom apartment currently in Fort Worth has risen about 25% from where it was just a couple of years ago. So you're having to work, I believe it was was it 180 hours a week in order to be able to afford that one bedroom. So affordable housing is for everyone. That is no longer, or should probably have never been, a stigma for just low-income individuals, because realistically we're all one paycheck away from needing the assistance that we provide. Where we find ourselves on the spectrum in the continuum of care is that we are throughout that spectrum. Like I said earlier, we provide assistance for individuals who are homeless or facing homelessness. We also provide assistance to persons who are below the area median income. So for a single individual, I believe for us to come into our program, as long as they're under 36,000, which a lot of workers, young adults who are going into the workforce based on the salaries, find themselves under that threshold. They may only make 24 to 25, so then they are eligible for rental assistance that we provide through our Section 8 or our scattered sites programs. And then throughout that spectrum, again, we have Family Self-Sufficiency, which is a program through our housing that allows persons to set goals in a 5-year contract, set funds aside, and if their ultimate goal is to reach home ownership, then that program allows them to clean up their credit and go through that process and successfully purchase a home.
Thank you. So I want to move on to closing questions. I want to ask each of you, what do you think is going well with our local continuum of care, and what are we doing or what should we be doing to improve it as we're facing growing population and more expensive rental and housing and all of these different issues?
In this environment, there's this understanding, I think, when the law was written, that the market will respond to the needs of the people. But if we're short housing, the needs of the people do not matter, because we cannot get enough housing and keep that price at a reasonable rate. So what I'm saying here is that the continuum of care, we've got a lot of people within Fort Worth that are doing near perfect work, and are still feeling the immense pressure of not getting to all the people that they want to get to.
So for Tarrant County Homeless Coalition, we get compliments often on how well our community collaborates together. Accolades from all over the United States. And I think it definitely speaks to what our colleague said here, is that there aren't enough resources. And without each individual agency's partnership and our effective collaboration, we wouldn't be doing as well as a community as we are. Especially, it was very noted when we received the EHVs, or the emergency housing vouchers that were put down by HUD. One of the requirements were that we worked with our public housing authorities to distribute those. There were so many communities that were did not have an established relationship with their public housing authority. So that process alone took months and months and months. We office in their office. So we said, hey, friend, help us. Let's make this work. And so I just think we do an amazing job at collaboration. And I'm so proud to be a part of this community that does do so well in that, and that we do get accolades from other communities around the states. What we need to do to further our collaboration and to further our progress is a little bit, Jonah, of what you and I were talking about earlier, is taking this data and these numbers of being 36,000 units short and figuring out how are we going to fix that. So Tarrant County Homeless Coalition mobilized a housing roundtable where we brought in affordable housing developers, nonprofit developers, for-profit developers, lenders, architects, to figure out what are the biggest barriers in our community in the city of Fort Worth and Tarrant County to making affordable housing development affordable, so that then our community members can also have an affordable place to live. The county is going to be releasing a report and a study that they just had done, and our hope is for our housing roundtable is to come alongside the county and say, we want to take this information and activate our system and put this into action so that we can get more units online quicker, effectively, and ultimately working to close that gap.
Okay. Well, I'm just going to kind of echo and ditto a couple of the statements. As a community, we really are complimented throughout the nation on our ability to collaborate. And I think that is one of the things that we do best in Tarrant County as far as the continuum of care. We don't always like each other, but we work with each other for the greater good. We see the bigger picture, and we're able to get out of our own individual silos to meet the community's need as a whole. So I think that is something that we do far and beyond some of our other continuums that we've seen throughout the nation. In an ideal world, if we could throw everything on the board and see what sticks, I think it would be great if everyone involved in affordable housing would think outside the box. Try to be innovative and try and see what their specialty niche is that they could bring to this problem to work toward a common solution. I think at Fort Worth Housing we've done a really good job of thinking outside of the box and being innovative in our approach to not only building affordable housing but adding to our portfolio to assist with addressing the needs of the homeless. And I think that's something that a lot of PHAs probably should consider in their operation. We have Move Up. So of our 5,800 vouchers we have, approximately 800 to 1,000 of those have been carved out to assist homelessness, either through Move Up, our PBV units that we've earmarked to assist the homeless. Just thinking outside of the box, and even through our development, we've worked collaboratively with several developers in the city to be able to develop permanent supportive housing. So I think in an idealistic world, best case scenario is to think outside the box, be innovative, and look at alternative housing. Everything may not look like our normal apartments or single family. Maybe we need to look at tiny homes. And do a really good education campaign so that there's no one in the community that feels like allowing, whether it's a formerly homeless individual or a mother who is working 2 jobs and has 2 children, would not be able to benefit from just a different environment, because realistically land is at a minimum, and we're having to figure out, without doing high density everywhere, what is the best way as a community to meet the rising need of affordable housing. So just to think outside the box and be innovative and be open to new ideas.
Thank you. And I'm going to do one last surprise question for you guys. What does your agency need from community members? What can community members do to help you guys out? And I'm going to start with Lanesha and we'll go backwards.
So I think community members, what we would need most at Fort Worth Housing is just your input and your openness. Believe it or not, we still have some pockets of our community that have NIMBY, affordable housing. So NIMBY is not in my backyard. So they feel like if a affordable housing project comes to their community, or we're looking at maybe placing formerly homeless individuals in the community, that it's going to bring down their property values, or it's going to completely make their environment go in disarray. And that's truly not the case. Everyone, I am a big believer, everyone, if given the opportunity to regain entry into society and stability, we all want the same thing. We all want to be whole, and we want to give back, and we want to participate, and we want to have positive lives. And so having someone who may have had some challenges prior to residing in your neighborhood would not guarantee the reducing of your property. It would not increase crime. It's not going to devalue your property value. So just be open to that and know that everyone should be afforded the right to start over.
I would also like to add to Lanesha's NIMBY thought is that what most people don't understand is individuals experiencing homelessness. And I say experiencing homelessness because homelessness does not define a person. It is just something that they are currently experiencing. And so most people don't understand that people experience homelessness in their own neighborhood. So providing that affordable housing is not a detriment to your community. It is helping your neighbor, actually. And so input, openness, education about who we are serving. And I'm just going for the gusto here. We can always use money. There is never enough resources, so we can always use unrestricted funds to keep the movement.
So you touched on a lot of what I would have wanted to talk about, which is just thinking about affordable housing not just being for folks that are from over there. And I think that is a lot of the language that's being used, especially when you're using the word NIMBY. They're thinking people from somewhere else are going to somehow invade my beautiful, perfect neighborhood and change it. When in actuality, you're seeing a lot of neighborhoods, especially in the DFW area, where you are losing families that have been there for a long time because they're priced out. Some folks are renting and they've been in the same apartment for 10, 15 years, and suddenly it becomes unaffordable. Folks can't keep up with those property taxes. You're starting to see communities disintegrate because the housing market has just gotten so crazy that folks that have been housed may not necessarily be as safe as they used to be. There was this really one, I hate to think in memes, but there was one really telling meme I saw probably a few months ago where they said, if you live in an area where you can roll out of bed and get a cup of coffee, but the person who made your coffee had to drive an hour in order to make it for you, you don't live in a neighborhood, you live in an amusement park. And that is truly the story here, right? When I talk about affordable housing, it's not something that happens in a vacuum. Affordable housing is affordable labor. If you don't want to pay, your Starbucks barista $40 an hour, then you need to make sure that they can live somewhere that doesn't require them to make $40 an hour in your neighborhood. If you love your little your favorite little restaurants, if you love your little art studios, there's all these businesses that seem to be dying in these major metropolitan areas, and we're losing a lot of the flavor, we're losing a lot of the convenience, quite frankly, of having all of these wonderful things that make up our neighborhoods, because those folks that made money on the margins simply cannot afford to live any longer. And so we need to start reframing the way in which we think about affordable housing in our neighbors, and we also need to become aware of how those who are in power are thinking about that too, and engaging with them from there.
Thank you all so much for being here today. Please give our panelists a round of applause.